Well, hello everybody. I thought I'd make a little short video, digress a little bit from the restoration, about overdrives. And I'm doing this because Chris Arnson, who I believe lives in Wyoming and is working on, I think, a BN4, messaged me and asked me how I got the accumulator housing out of the body of the overdrive. And I made a little tool for that, which I'll show you in a second. The first thing is that I'm not an expert on overdrives. I'm really not, and there are a lot of people who know a lot more about them than I do, but I'm coming from the position of somebody who will have a go at most things, and I rebuilt mine a little while ago, probably about a year, 18 months ago, so I've got to remember what I did. When I first thought about doing it, it was really quite daunting, because when you look at them on paper, they're full of little bits and pieces and they look really, really complicated. They're actually not that bad. I think they are a masterpiece of engineering, quite beautiful to look at. They really should be fixed inside a clear shell of some sort so you can see them working, because they really are terrific. So the first thing is, how did I get the accumulator housing out? Well, this is the tool that I made to do that, and it's really quite simple. It should be quite clear how it operates. The first thing is, it's all mounted on a piece of 1/4" threaded rod. I think it's quarter or three, no, it's quarter, it's not 3/16. And on the end here is a little conical shaped piece of aluminium which is threaded onto the rod, and then there's another nut on the top there which is locked up against it to stop it from turning, so it's like a lock nut. This is a piece of aluminium I turned down in a drill. I don't have a lathe. It could be anything. It could be brass, could be steel, could even be plastic, would probably work. This then, the next piece is a rubber stopper of some sort. I don't know whether it's a door stopper. I got it from a hardware store, and that goes onto there. There's a washer after that, and then there's a piece of tube which is free to move on the rod, another washer, and another nut on the end there. So this piece of tube needs to be long enough so that you can insert this inside the accumulator housing. And then what you do is grab yourself a spanner and tighten up the lock nut on the end. Now, if I can just get that on there, nut's a bit damaged. Now, as you can see, if you watch that rubber there, as we tighten that up, it pulls in that aluminium cone and expands the rubber, which then grips the inside of the accumulator housing, and you can pull it out. Worked really well for me. It came out surprisingly easy. So this is for you, Chris. I hope that's of help, and you can make one of those yourself and it should work. Chris also asked me about the O-rings on the operating shaft. There's a shaft that runs right through the overdrive with a sort of a cam on it which operates the plunger system. You have to replace those. If they're not there, it means they're gone. They should have them. If you don't have them, it'll leak. There are 2 levers on either end of that shaft. The one nearest the solenoid, I think, is clamped on, so that should come off by undoing the clamp nut. The other one, I seem to remember, is pinned, and you should be able to drive the pin out with a drift of some sort. It could be that the pin is tapered and will only come out one way, so have a look at that. You have to take both of the levers off to get the O-rings on, but you don't have to take the shaft out. So that's really quite important to do that. I didn't replace my bearings. They seemed fine. There was no problem with them, so as far as I could see they were fine. I put them back together. I didn't remove or take apart the sprag clutch in the end of the housing. I didn't think it really needed it. It was all clean, so I just sort of flushed it out. It seemed to work well. So I didn't want to pull that to bits. As far as replacing parts, I replaced any springs or ball bearings that were a part of the mechanism, operating mechanism, the valves basically, the ball bearing valves. And I replaced O-rings. Any O-rings, there's some internal O-rings on the accumulator spring housing and bits and pieces like that. You'll find them when you take them to pieces. I didn't replace the accumulator spring, the big heavy one. I measured it and it seemed within specs. I have a feeling I might have put a washer inside the housing just to perhaps up the pressure a little bit. I can't remember, but I think I might have. As far as assembly lube goes, I didn't use gear oil. They don't run on gear oil, they run on engine oil. They should run on a non-friction modified oil, like a 4-stroke oil, something like that. There is a cone clutch inside, which you'll see, which runs in oil. That needs to be in good condition, so make sure it's not down to the rivets. That's fairly important, otherwise it won't work properly. What I used was this, which is just an assembly lube, Federal Mogul assembly lube, but you could use ordinary engine oil. I prefer this because it's a bit thicker, doesn't run everywhere. So I think that's probably about it. There are not a lot of difficulties. One of the hardest things is lining up the two gears. There are two gears which have to fit on the the output shaft of the gearbox, and they're splined and they have to be lined up, otherwise it's very difficult to mate the overdrive unit with the gearbox. Now I did mine with the gearbox apart, so I used that third motion shaft, that output shaft. I think it's called a third motion shaft, somebody can correct me, the output shaft, and I located all the gears together on that and then made sure that I didn't move the overdrive, turn it in any way, and it actually went back together quite easily. The oil pump I didn't pull to pieces. I think I took the pump out, but I couldn't get the body out, so I left it there. There is a little trick to pulling that clear so that it clears the cam when you mate the overdrive back with the gearbox. Again, there's some stuff on the internet about that. That's a little bit difficult to do. Mine went back together really quite easily. I think that's probably about it. There are 3 marks on the planet gears which need to be oriented in the right places for it all to work. Otherwise it doesn't work properly, so you need to check that. Again, there's some stuff on the internet, but really not that hard to do, not as daunting as I thought they would be initially. So I hope, Chris, that is some help to you and to anybody else who might be doing this and who might be having a crack at rebuilding an overdrive for the first time. It's not as scary as it first appears. Good luck.